threw money at and hired a good, notable defensive coordinator, when will we do that for the offense? It's an interesting question. I've been a defender of Tommy Rees over the last few years. I think this year's probably been his toughest test yet with the struggles along the offensive line. But today I do think was strictly on the coaching staff. I know Brian Kelly makes the final decision overall, and maybe it's stubbornness on his end. I don't really know what's going on in that room, obviously. But I think him and Tommy Rees specifically have to get together this week and really make a conscious decision to say, hey, we're going to move to Drew Pine as our quarterback. Maybe we keep Tyler Buckner in there as a wrench, and a gadget player at the quarterback position. And then Jack Cohn's the backup. If Pine goes down, then obviously then Cohn gets his opportunity again. But overall, I think Tommy Rees has sort of been put in an interesting situation this year. And I think overall he's called a decent offense for what he's had, at least in the game. So if you want to blame him for having Jack Cohn in the game, then fine. I'm not exactly sure that's his call to make. But overall, when Jack Cohn's been in the game, I don't think that Tommy Rees has called horrible plays per se. It's just been an interesting situation for him. And I think he's made somewhat the most of it. And I kind of agree with what Daniel Wade is saying here. I think Tommy had a bad game today. And a lot of that, like I said, still has to do with the personnel that were on the field. When Pine came in, I thought he called a perfectly fine game overall. If it was his decision to sort of disrupt the momentum and put Buckner in on that first drive of Pine, then certainly I think that was a pretty horrific coaching decision. But in general, I still think Rees is doing fine overall. So, all right, guys, we're gonna talk here like maybe 5 more minutes or so. Hopefully you guys are still bringing your questions and your comments. Again, this is the Notre Dame post-game show. I'm here with you every week. I usually have my partner Ben Belden with me as well. He had a wedding to attend to, so he was unable to do the post-game show. This isn't going to be, like I said, a super long post-game show today. I'm actually away visiting family myself and have some things I need to do to prepare for a wedding I'm going to be attending tomorrow. So we'll talk here for a few more minutes. Like I said, make sure to keep throwing your comments in here overall. But kind of answer some of these questions that are going on. Coaching staff, did the coaching staff commit 3 turnovers? No, Daniel, I do not think the coaching staff committed 3 turnovers, but I do believe they didn't put their players in the best opportunities to make plays or with the personnel. The first one was completely on Jack Cohen. That's a coaching decision to have him in that game. And I think that's what some people are getting at overall. And then I think the Tyler Buckner one, you could argue, is on the coaching staff as well. He's a guy that whenever he's in the game, teams are pretty much saying Notre Dame's going to run the ball, whether it be with the running back or with Tyler. And it tends to typically be with Tyler Buckner. And then all of a sudden you're put in a 3rd and 8 situation. You have him step back there, and Cincinnati brings a nice blitz, and he gets hit when he throws, and it's a touchdown. So, or a turnover. And then obviously the second turnover, that was the Chris Tyree fumble. That's just something that, can't happen, but unfortunately it is football. And, you can survive that one turnover. If that was the one turnover of the game, Notre Dame could have maybe survived that. But having 2 turnovers, one of them specifically in the red zone, to probably when you're going to go up 7-0 to start the game and sort of maybe build some momentum moving forward. Those are hard to, regardless of who's at quarterback after that, those are hard to come back from. So I do think that while yes, the coaches aren't the ones turning the ball over, they can put the right personnel on the field and prevent turnovers from happening. So, and again, I think some of you have joined a little bit later. I've kind of hit on the Pine stuff already, but that's sort of where my head is at as well, until I kind of maybe dissect some of the game later this week. But I absolutely do agree that if Drew Pine was in the entire game, I think Notre Dame wins. And it's probably a little bit closer to the reversal of this score. I think that in a lot of aspects of this game, Notre Dame was the better football team, at least when you're watching it with your eyes and not looking at, the paper box score and stuff like that. But that's neither here or there. Notre Dame ran with Jack Cohn the entire first half, had a little sprinkle of Tyler Buckner in there, and that, that was kind of the end all be all. So we'll see where Notre Dame falls in the polls this week. My guess is they fall pretty dramatically to an extent, just because of the fact that they've had some rough games this year. And this was sort of the first game that people gave another team a chance to win. I mean, I guess you could argue Wisconsin last week, but that's turning into, obviously Wisconsin's probably significantly worse than Notre Dame overall. But this was sort of that first game that Notre Dame could have put a signature win on. And I could see them dropping a few, certainly because of they haven't gotten a lot of respect to begin this anyway. So that would be sort of my argument there. Not sure I agree with, this Cincy stinks. I don't want to continue on the path of what I've said a lot of this already. I mean, I do think Notre Dame's the more talented football team. I think in general, they're probably the better football team overall. If Pine ends up starting, but yeah, I think for a group of 5 team right now, Cincinnati's a pretty good program. Actually, really good program, I should say, for a Power 5 or for a group of 5. We'll see what they do the rest of the season. This was sort of their big test as well. But what I do agree with Modine here on is that I think Notre Dame should have won this game from talent alone and so on and so forth. So